Comment card. So our first item of business is the GRPS finance training regarding audits.
That's what I was going to say. Good afternoon. We thought since it's our audit season that we'd spend some time and do some high level talking about audits. So I'm going to just jump right in. Why do we do audits? It's a state requirement that we must be audited at least annually. The audits have to be performed by a certified public accountant. The information is due to the state by November 1st, and they have to be available to the public. So we do post them on our website under the transparency reporting. Our audit timeline, and I'm going to go kind of quick because I do know you've got the board work session, but if you've got questions, you know to stop me, and we'll try to keep it quick and moving. So our audit timeline is usually in July. The auditors are out for about a week. And at that point, they're trying to do some systems testing, some internal control testing, looking at our processes, and they do that by selecting samples and walking those through our system. At year end, they come back usually the day after Labor Day, and so they'll be here next week to do some more. At that point, their focus is more on testing of balances and looking to see, where is our revenue, where are our expenses, and go down through the balance sheet, our assets and our liabilities, and tying those out. Field work usually lasts about 2 weeks. That's always my goal, to get them in and out in 2 weeks. They also we do implementing of new accounting standards. This year we do have at least one that we're implementing. It's GASB 101 for compensated absences. So we're going to be doing some changing of what gets recorded and how it gets recorded in the statements. When they leave, typically we've got that like mid-September to mid-October where we're wrapping up any open items they may have. They do have a multi-level review process as well. So that usually takes, and that includes their professional standards review. So one thing with Plant Moran, they are experts in school district audits. They have several of their staff members across their practice that are on state committees and national committees as well. So definitely feel like we get our sound advice when we work with Plant Moran. And then in October, they typically come to a board work session to present the audit to the board. By November 1st, our results, and the audit itself is due into the state, as well as what we call our FID reporting. It's the Financial Information Database that we have to update with SEPI. So the auditor process, they come in and they're looking for audit evidence about the amounts and disclosures in the financial statements. Can we verify what those are? Like I mentioned, when they do the test of systems and processes, they're looking at our internal control and making sure that we've got a fair presentation in the financial statements. They look for appropriateness of our accounting policy and the reasonableness of any estimates that we're using. And also the overall presentation in the financial statements. A lot of that is very prescribed by generally accepted accounting principles. So they will give us usually 3 basic audit documents. We get the report to the board, our big financial statement, and our federal awards statement as well. And they do I got the audit presentation that they typically do as well. So those are our 3 big documents. So I'm going to kind of spend a little bit of time on them. The report to the Board of Education, the big part of that one is it does have some required communications to the board in there as well. And if they were, the first letters are kind of boilerplate, but that's where if they had a significant, I think one of those, if they had a disagreement with management about what's in the statements, that would be where they would tell you as well. If they have, a problem with one of our estimates and we weren't able to resolve it, that's where you would see it as well. But So the first part is just kind of this required communications. We've always been very positive in those. And then the second part that, and like I said, Plant Moran are experts, but one of the things they like to do is like an additional service is to offer informational items as well. So there's usually about 10 pages of what's new in schools, what's trending, what's upcoming as well. So it's just kind of a good informational item for you. Usually pretty easy to read, but like I said, they usually pack a lot in there. The financial report. So this is the big one, and it's our like 100 plus pages of information. It's got, we follow generally accepted accounting principles as well as requirements in the state accounting manual. One thing that we do is provide, as GRPS, some additional information that's not necessarily required, but we've always kind of done it, so we've continued to do it. So the sections in there, there's a section that starts with management, discussion, and analysis, so that's just kind of a narrative of what the overall statements are. One thing, there are district-wide statements, and that lumps all of our fund level statements together. Those are, to me, kind of confusing, but they're required under the generally accepted accounting principles. The fund level statements, those are ones that we typically focus more on, so that's got your general fund, your capital project funds, your special revenue funds. And that's the way we look at it monthly. That's the way we talk about it when we talk about general fund, fund balance, etc. The notes, again, that's another rather lengthy section of the statements, but it does report out a lot of good information about how we do our accounting, what it is. And going through that, there's some required supplementary information. Most of that is based off from our pension plans. So that one is another one that sometimes it's a little hard to read, but it's the required information about our MIPSR's retirement plan. And the other supplementary information, that's more, I want to say discretionary, additional information that we've always provided. One thing to note this year, I am going to have Plant Moran actually prepare the statements this year. We've been one of the few districts that actually prepare our own statements for many years. Back when I was the auditor here, GRPS still prepared their own statements. So when I came back, moved here, I still just kept preparing our own statements. But we're trying to achieve more efficiencies both on our side and on Plant Moran's sides for the audit. So they approached me last year and said, Rhonda, we really like to do your statements. You're about the only, I think we're the only school district that they work with that does our own statements. And it's just harder for them to get through the review process. And we're losing a couple staff members out of the business office. So it's just kind of like, okay, maybe this is the time to work smarter, not harder. So that's what we're going to do. So it's likely will look a little different, but all the required information will still be there. So not that we're trying to significantly change anything, but they said, you know, like where we call it note A, it might, or they might call it note 1. So things like that may change a little bit. On the federal awards, districts that expend more than $750,000 are required to have what's a single audit. So obviously we get more than $750,000 in federal awards. Again, that report letter has a series of report letters in that document. The next section is a detail of federal awards that listed out by categories. And then there's a schedule of finding and question cost, and I'm going to talk about a little bit more of that in a second. The audit data itself, basically the statements are GRPS. That's why, you know, historically I said we've always prepared them. There are statements. The only thing that's really there that the auditors do is offer their opinion. So there are 4 types of opinions you can get: unmodified, qualified, adverse, or disclaimer of opinion. We've always had an unmodified, so that's the highest level of assurance that they'll give on a statement. So even though it's kind of almost maybe unmodified, sounds a little strange, but it is the highest level. So We went back the 5 years, but I can say as long as I've been here and even when I was the auditor, it's always been unmodified for GRPS. This is going now to the schedule of findings and questions cost. And again, we pulled 5 years of them to show you what it's there. So this is kind of the Cliff Notes version of the single audit. So on the top, they give you, what kind of opinion did they issue on the financial statements, and you'll see the unmodified. They'll look and say, on internal control, were there any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies or non-compliance? And we've got out on fiscal year 20, all of them are no. Same thing with federal awards and your major programs. All of them are no. They identify when they do their single audit testing, they look at the expenditures and they kind of rotate through a cycle. There's a certain dollar threshold that they have to test. So they pick what they call major programs to hit that dollar threshold. So each year they'll show, like this year it was the child nutrition cluster and the special ed cluster that they did most of their testing on. And then they ask, does the auditee qualify as a low-risk auditee? And yes, we do. And then that's where they would list out their findings if they had them. So fiscal year 20, no findings, no questions, costs there. Fiscal year 21, same thing. And you'll see there in the middle that they tested different grant programs.
How do they determine? It's just random selection? How do they determine?
They kind of try to rotate through.
Okay.
And that's why, it's like we kind of can start to predict which ones they're going to do. But they do have to hit that dollar threshold. So like this year they were planning on Title I and one of our other grant programs, but then when they're starting to see some of our expenditure numbers, and they're like, no, I think we need to add Title II as well. So this year they're going to be testing 3 programs again. When we had the COVID funding, because they were new, rapidly changing, all of that, those years they did test heavily on the ESSER funding. Same thing for our fiscal year 22. And 23, this is when you'll see we had, they were testing food service, and there's one that they called a significant deficiency. And I'm going to flip over here to where they wrote up the findings, so you'll see a lot of conditions there. But what it was is we were providing food service to the non-GRPS sites. As some of those sites did not qualify we still had to take the free and reduced lunch applications. So we collected, I believe it says 53 manual applications, and there was a problem with one of them. And what it was is the top part didn't agree with the bottom part, and we didn't catch it, and we offered that child the reduced lunch price, and they should not have received the reduced lunch price. So it was one of those, it is what it is, but it was, to me, I struggled with them calling a significant deficiency, but that's what it was. We put in one thing, when you do receive an audit finding, you have to put a corrective action plan in place. So food service put another review in place on those free and reduced lunch applications.
So even when there's, just for my understanding, even when that's identified, the opinion can still come out as unmodified?
Yep.
Okay. What does the opinion then represent?
That it's in all material respects, our financial statements are fairly presented.
Okay, they're just identifying, hey, you missed something.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
And then last year's we're back to everything is fine through there. And they did, because we had the finding in the food service program the year before, they did go back through and do the additional testing on that program last year as well. So, okay, that's all I had on the audit. A high-level audit just to kind of get you thinking about what you're going to start to see in the next few weeks, months.
Well, and it is good to see that we are doing very well in this area with all of these unmodifieds and actually showing just one area where we needed to do some corrective action that was fairly simple and direct, so that's good news. Any other questions or comments for Ms. Cribbs?
Yeah, just a couple simple ones just to make sure I understand. And I tried to do a lot of this ahead of time, but some I wasn't sure about. We qualify as low risk because we've had approved audits in the past. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I was trying to figure out what.
There's,
that
and I
specifically-
say in the
specifically-
threshold and all of the testing and all of that. I'm not actually as sure about that. That might be a good question when Plant Moran's here.
Okay.
I can have them answer what a low risk oddity.
Okay. And then the additional information that we provide, both Grand Rapids and Plant Moran, who's the audience for that? What is it helpful, or why is it provided?
For me, it's like we've got major funds and non-major funds. A lot of our other funds qualify as non-major. We'd only have to show them all lumped together.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always said, well, to me, it's important information to show food service separate from Houseman Field, separate from GRASP, and all of those details. Debt funds, we could lump all together. And again, for me, it was just, I think that's good information to have
Okay.
with all the debt funds separately. Capital projects the same way. So it's just kind of like that additional. The other part where we probably show more information is on the detail of general fund, breaking it into the three components with general operating, grants, and athletics.
Mhm.
So again, that's the way we look at our monthly financial statements. So I wanted to keep our annual statements the same way.
Okay, and things like athletics, we have money coming in from the Grand Rapids Public School Foundation. Is that still accounted for in an audit like this, or is
Mhm.
that separate? Because
Yep.
it actually comes in and is spent through us, it's audited as well.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Anything else? Okay.
All right. So next we have our finance action items, and there is the purchasing agenda. Are there any questions specific to the purchasing agenda for this evening? And then I see Richard has his hand up, so I'll go this way, and then we'll go from there.
For support materials and services, item 4, so that's the lockout company. Is that a completely grant-funded item? Is that out of our general fund at all?
It's completely the grant, the section 31A.
Oh, okay. What is that grant entail? I'm not familiar.
It's the one for school mental health and school security.
Yeah.
So when it first started, it was 2 separate grants, and then they merged them
Oh,
both into the
oh.
31AA.
Okay.
And that's the one last year where it was drastically cut and then reinstated, so.
That's
yeah.
right. Okay. I feel like I have more questions around this, but they're not necessarily finance related. So I'll save it for now, but I was just curious to know if that was totally grant funded or if that was coming out of general fund. So,
No,
thanks.
grant funded.
All righty.
Yep, I have a handful of questions. I did email them in
That's what I was gonna
advance.
say, you did.
Okay. Do I ask them or do you want to?
That's what I was gonna
Okay,
say.
okay.
I was say, if you wanna go ahead and
Okay,
ask,
great.
and I've got some colleagues here too, the ones that I can't answer, so.
Great, thank you. Okay, general fund, just kind of wanting to understand how do we usually outsource for COIT, for the dancing
Yes,
class?
the dance instruction at Coit, we've used PT Arts. I had my staff go back in it because I'm like, we've used that company for the curriculum and the dance curriculum for a number of years. Since 2009
Okay, wow.
is when we started using them. So they're very familiar with our curriculum and what we are hoping to accomplish, so.
Okay, thank you. And then the relationship with John Ball Zoo, the classes at the zoo, and then they're also offering additional curriculum offerings?
They're doing with some of the programming. So we do lease classroom space in one of their buildings.
Okay.
And some office space and ancillary space as well. So when the kids have their band, they go up to one of the bigger rooms and things like that. So so that's the ongoing lease for that. And then this year, after 50-some years, they are going to charge us a little bit for programming for the staff time that the zoo staff puts into working with our students. So after 50 years and the charge was there, I thought it was, a pretty reasonable amount that they're asking for. So just a note on this one is we are still actually negotiating an update to the contract for it. So this right now is a roll forward of the existing contract, but I just want to preface that if it comes back later, it's because we've come to a mutual agreement on the lease space and what that might change. So
Just to make sure I heard you, Ms. Cribbs, this is the first time that they're charging us for the curriculum? that
for the
they're offering?
programming piece, yep, their staff time.
And then for Panorama, just wanting to understand, one, how the data is made available to staff. How do they access that?
For that, I'm going to ask you to join me.
And definitely thank you for the question. And so we worked with our student data systems, our SDS department, and there's nightly uploads. And so what happens is, so if staff change or leave, there's uploads. And then through their email, they get access to the platform. If there's ever someone that kind of says, I didn't get it, didn't receive it, we can manually override it and put their name in as well. And so there's trainings that are offered once the the data is available in the fall and the spring.
What kind of data what is being captured from that?
And so really think of two big categories. So think of first of SEL surveys first, and then the first category is scholar competency and well-being, and then scholar supports and environments. And then things around that, you think of positive feelings, challenging feelings, sense of belonging, self-efficacy are the first category. And then school climate and engagement is the second category.
That's very helpful. Were you going to ask a question about that? I saw you.
Oh,
about
yeah,
Panorama
unless, are you
specifically.
still talking about Panorama? Feel
Yeah,
free.
yeah. No.
Keep going.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
My bond question, thanks, Mr. Atkins. Bond question, we went from 2 million, this is for number 2, C2. We went from 2 million to 33 million. I think my big question around that was the follow-up of how does this play into the bigger budget? Because we approved the budget and now it's a big range to go through, and so how does that big amount or shift?
I was going to say, I do have Mr. Smart here, but I'm going to try it a little bit. So when we start planning out a bond project, we start with, okay, let's get the construction manager on board. So that was the initial. Now that we've gone out and done the additional bids of all the subcontractors and all the rest of it, that's what we're getting. But I'll let Mr. Smart give you a better explanation than my Cliff Notes version.
Good afternoon, everyone. And that was perfect. So the original approved amount was just to retain the professional services of a construction manager. Once the project is developed and we go out for bids and we receive those numbers, then we adjust the CM, the construction manager's purchase order to reflect the guaranteed maximum price. And that's what this is. And can I share this? And just a little side note, I wanted to share, because I know Trustee Milton, there were some things that initially we thought that we couldn't have. I'm very pleased to say that we got them. We have now some collaboration or flexible teaching spaces within the building. And I'm pleased to also say that we are about $2.1 million below budget. And that also includes.
I'll spend it for you.
I'm sure you will.
Show me the plans.
And that also includes a healthy owner control contingency of about $3.2 million, which if we don't have to use it, it'll come back to the district and we'll be able to do other projects. So that's exciting news.
That is very exciting. Thanks, Mr. Smart. So I think just kind of going back to the second part of my question, so if we're looking at the full landscape of our budget, so our budget is increasing now by 31,000, $31 million because of this particular.
Yeah, capital projects, we don't budget as like in the, when the board adopts a budget, we don't have to approve a capital projects budget.
Okay, great. That's
So
what I
we've
was
got
trying to
general
understand.
fund, we've got debt
Okay.
retirement and special revenue
Great.
funds where you have to adopt one. What Mr. Smart's talking about is, yes, we've got our bond money, we've planned out what our bond projects are going to be, so that's the budget he's referring to. So that's where we'll adjust within that. And each project does get a budget, but as we've gone through some of our other projects right now, we're still trying to work through, so I know, Mrs. Mellon, you want to spend the money, but we're just kind of.
Yeah.
I'm only joking.
We all want to spend it. Well, we can spend it somewhere. I just don't quite know where yet. So.
Yeah, and so, as far as like with the bond projects, we get them and they come to us kind of we previously approved this amount for this particular building, and then as they actually go through and actually contract the work, that's how it comes back before us. And so where there may have been an estimate at one point, if they're coming in a little higher, it's still within the confines of that original budget. It's not like it's something totally new, because they're still in that $35 million that we put out there for this building. And so if it changes from 30 million to 31 million, we're still under that 35 million that the board originally approved to build the school for. So that's kind of how it is. I hope that makes sense. So as it comes to us on these bond projects, remember that these amounts have already been previously approved by the board for the work to begin. These are just the subcontracting that's taking place, or the actual bringing on of the project managers that are already planned for in the budget for that
It
building of
was
the school.
budgeted, not allotted yet, so we're
Yeah,
allotting
correct.
it today by voting. Well, we will, not today, actually.
Yes. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, Ms. Melton.
Yeah, actually, it was back about the panorama. Sorry, I didn't know you were
Okay,
moving
no,
on.
great. Sorry. No, shoot.
Sorry. Distractions. It should be easy. So I'm just wondering a little bit about how we use that data, the panorama data. I know we've had it for a number of years, at least enough years that we know it pretty well. So how are we using that data on a annual or even more than that basis?
Very good question. And so, one of the examples we can give is we had 39 schools that had what we call PBIS plus teams last year. And so they used the data to really inform next steps at the building level. And I think that had a really strong sense of, when you look at our overall data, take it off Panorama, there was a 17.2% reduction in suspensions last year. And we think it has a direct connection to having a sense of belonging and things of that nature that's underlined in the Panorama survey that's happening really at the building level.
So the PBIS plus teams are using that data.
Yeah, that's one example of how I think building-based level teams. We have a lot of departments in a central office that use data, such as Panorama as being one. We triangulate a lot of data as well to make sure that you're not using one data source to make informed decisions. But that's just one measure that we're using. We know if we create environments when scholars want to be here, and also staff too, because this is a staff survey as well. You create that environment, they're more likely to succeed.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering specifically, have budgets been adjusted? Have personnel been adjusted based on that data? Any macro things you can, point out?
And so it's hard to say from a budget perspective. What we can say is we know the data allows you to determine what you need to focus on. And so if your culture climate, it gives you kind of distinct numbers, and then for example, we have and then we tie it into either our minors or majors that we look at data. We look at those data together to figure out next steps.
Okay, so my next is there, because this is an action item, is there a motion to approve? Excuse me, is there a motion to approve the purchasing agenda?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? All right, this will move forward to the full board. And then, are there any other reports or updates?
I just want to give a couple quick little updates. School aid, there's been really no movement out of Lansing. At KSBO last week, the other business managers for the other local districts, we started talking about what happens if there's not one by September 30th, or if they go into a state shutdown, what that means for us. So one of the things we're looking at is at cash flow as a county, and individual school districts, each one's looking at their own. Fortunately, we have 100% property tax collection in the summer, so that typically helps us with our cash flow. We've gotten a lot of property tax collections now. But if the state stays shut down for a longer period of time and we don't get like October state aid, and if it really drags on and we don't get November state aid, we're going to be monitoring cash flow for the next few months to make sure that we're still okay. Obviously, making payroll is always a priority, but we should be fine through at least the end of November. But as a county, we did ask the ISD to start working with Troon on contacting some local banks and potentially get a pre-approval if one of the districts needs to, including us, needs to go and borrow money, to how could we shorten that process going forward. So I'm hopeful it wouldn't drag on and that we'll be fine, but we'd rather have it ready to go if we need it than to need it and then have to start the process.
Excuse me, Ms. Cripps, there's a question specifically to that issue.
Yeah, just with, I hope folks in the community realize, we are spending fund balance dollars right now until we get state money. And, thank you for everyone in your office monitoring all this. I guess my question is, as we approach that October date, actually now until then, will your office be keeping the board updated on where we are financially in a way different than you would typically, just as we're spending?
And it's just to draw a bit of a distinction. Using fund balance is different than our cash flow.
Yeah.
So right now, with having a lot of summer property tax collections in,
Yeah.
we are sitting on a very good cash
Oh, okay.
position right now.
Okay.
So
That's good to know.
So
Okay,
yeah,
that's
so
different from my
cash-wise,
thought.
we're doing good for the next few months.
Okay.
And that's always been very helpful because state aid, our fiscal year started July 1st, but we don't get our first state aid payment until October 20th.
Okay.
So having that 100% summer tax collection has always been
Puts us
great.
in a good spot.
There are a large number of districts throughout the state that do have to borrow because of that gap in state aid collections. So we've never had to borrow, and I hope to keep it that way, but this is unusual times we're living in, and just wanted to be ready in case something.
That's very helpful. That was different than my understanding, so I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Anyone else have questions with regards to that? Okay, Ms. Cripps?
And just one other highlight I wanted to start to preview. Our 2016 bonds, we have some of them that will be callable in May. So we have a potential to refund those because of the interest rates are better than they were back when we issued them. So we've started having some conversations with PFM, our financial advisor on bonds, about what that may look like. Right now, it's trending that if we were able to refund those, it would be about a $5 million savings to our taxpayers. So obviously, we're going to be pursuing that, watching it, and just to kind of wanted to preview that for you now. If we continue, and this, I'm going to say, hard to predict times these days. If everything stays constant, likely we'll need board action in October or November to go ahead and pursue this refunding that would likely take place in February or March. So just wanted to get it on your radar, just knowing that if we can save our taxpayers money, we're going to do it.
In
So.
summary, what is that? I'm not actually familiar with bond refunds. So in summary, very briefly, what does that look like? What does that mean for?
It's kind of like refinancing your mortgage.
Yep.
So interest rates have dropped, and there's a certain time period where you can't refund them, and we've got some that are refundable in May 1st.
Okay.
And you can do it within 60 or 90 days before that. So that's where okay, with interest rates being lower, it would be a good time to refund and get our taxpayers some savings. So we'll be watching that, working through what that looks like.
All right, thank you.
That's good news right there. Given that we're all city taxpayers, so, look forward to what that looks like. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, we have no policies, so, we'll give you back a few minutes before you go to your 5:30 meeting, colleagues. Good day.